I used to believe that when a father receives an expensive gift from his daughter, he would at least smile. Maybe nod. Say something like, "Thank you, you've made me proud." But instead, my father stood in silence, ran his hand gently over the shimmering silver paint of the brand new Mercedes, and asked, as if he were evaluating a disappointing purchase, "Why didn't you choose black? Silver looks weak." I spent my entire life trying to prove to him that I was worthy. As a woman who rose to the position of chief financial officer in a male-dominated world, I sacrificed, I fought. But when that sentence echoed in the garage, a sleek, high-end space I had gifted him, without a single word of acknowledgement, my heart clenched like a fist. I used to believe that if I tried hard enough, he would finally see me. That the sleepless nights over payroll spreadsheets, the tense meetings on the top floors of finance towers, would eventually earn me a warm glance, a pat on the shoulder. But his eyes never changed, still stern, cold, and distant, like he lived in another world. A world where pride was reserved for the sons. And I, a daughter, competent, but the wrong gender, the wrong kind of child, was always the one who still needed to try harder. I once thought money could change him. I was wrong. And that was the moment I realized external success can never fill an emotional void. No degree, no title, no glowing mention in the financial press would ever be enough for him to say, "You make me proud." That moment, inside a gleaming garage, next to the car I once believed would bridge the gap between father and daughter, was the moment I understood. My journey is no longer about earning his approval. It's about freeing myself from needing it. Eliza Matthews, 42, Chief Financial Officer at a major investment firm in Chicago, is admired for her grit, discipline, and razor-sharp financial mind. But behind her success lies an emotional emptiness stretching back to childhood, one that no amount of status or wealth could ever fill. Eliza grew up in a classic 3-story house in the northern suburbs of Illinois, with a lavender-filled backyard that looked peaceful but never felt warm. Her father, Richard Matthews, was a former naval officer whose words always carried the weight of command. Her mother died when Eliza was just 10. From then on, the house became a place of reminders, stern glances, and unspoken expectations. Even as a child, Eliza knew that love in her home didn't come in hugs or compliments. It came in grades, medals, and accolades. She learned to wake herself up at 5 a.m. for extra study sessions. She debated fiercely in state competitions, won a full scholarship to Northwestern, graduated with honors in finance, then went on to earn an MBA from Wharton. By 42, Eliza had everything most people only dream of: a 7-figure income, 2 luxury condos, one in Chicago, one in Miami, a Tesla Model S, and a portfolio that yielded steady returns. But what made her pause in the mirror each morning wasn't the wrinkles or the graying hair, it was the look in her own eyes. Empty. She was the kind of woman colleagues tiptoed around in the boardroom, but whispered about behind closed doors. She must be so lonely. And they were right. Eliza had few close friends. Never married. Love? She tried. But whenever a man suggested she slow down, relax, enjoy life, a deep fear would awaken inside her, a fear that if she ever stopped striving, she'd go back to being the daughter who wasn't good enough. She lived her life like a financial report, meticulous, precise, with no room for emotion. But one day, the mask began to crack. And it all started with one offhand comment from her father. "Why didn't you choose black?" Eliza had everything the outside world admired, but couldn't grasp the one thing she yearned for most: her father's acknowledgement. Every success came with a hollowness, as if the higher she climbed, the further she drifted from the love that should have been closest. In board meetings, Eliza was icy and exacting, controlling every line of data, making million-dollar decisions without blinking. But standing in front of her father, now in his 70s, hair silver, yet his gaze as sharp as ever, she became that 12-year-old girl again, trembling at an A-. She She believed that if she just tried a little harder, closed one more deal, earned one more title, he would finally be proud. But each trip home, even just for a family dinner, sent her spiraling into a familiar cycle of awkwardness, hope, disappointment, and silence. "How's work?" he'd ask, his tone as casual as if speaking to a stranger. "Good. I was just invited to the executive board." He nodded slightly, then turned to ask her 10th grade nephew, thinking about applying to West Point. That reply, that quiet dismissal, wasn't new. But it still stung every time. Eliza wondered, what did I do wrong? Was it because I was a girl? Because he never learned how to show love after mom died? Or because I was never the child he truly wanted? She hated how she became someone else around him. All the confidence and authority she wielded at work vanished. She shrank, fell silent. She had never told him the truth, not about her loneliness, not about the times she cried when he ignored her invitation to award ceremonies, not about how she always felt like she was on the outside of her own family, looking in. That internal conflict between the accomplished woman and the little girl who never got a hug had burned quietly for decades. And then, when the truth about her bloodline came out, it erupted into an emotional storm she could no longer contain. A routine DNA test opened a door Eliza never meant to unlock, and behind it lay a shattering truth. Richard Matthews was not her biological father. Everything she had built, every attempt to earn his pride, was rooted in a lie. It started so innocently. One Sunday afternoon, Eliza sat in her Chicago apartment scrolling through emails while waiting for laundry to finish. A coworker had sent her a promo code for a DNA testing service. Just for fun, he said, to see if you're part Viking or Celtic or whatever. Eliza wasn't that interested at first. But then she thought, why not? Maybe she'd learn something about her genetic health, especially since her mother had died of cancer. She sent in the sample. Just a small thing. Barely worth remembering. 2 weeks later, the results came back. She opened the app, scanned the regional breakdown, Europe, nothing surprising. But then the section titled Family Connections appeared. Line appears. No biological relationship detected with Richard Matthews as entered in the system. Possibly non-biological father. Eliza thought she had read it wrong. She closed the app and reopened it. Checked the name. Checked the data. No mistake. Her hands trembled. She didn't sleep that night. Fragmented memories rushed back like a flood. The distant look in her father's eyes, his cold demeanor, the way he always kept his distance. It all suddenly pieced itself into a new picture, a kind of explanation, but also a stab to the heart. Eliza didn't want to believe it. She called the testing center. They confirmed the results had been verified 3 times. Accuracy, 99.99%. Something inside her broke. If Richard wasn't her biological father, then why did he raise her? Why keep it a secret all these years? And worst of all, had he never truly loved her because he knew, all along, that she wasn't really his? The discovery hit like a silent earthquake. It didn't destroy everything at once, but it shook the very foundation of her life. Eliza, the woman who always kept control, was now facing a truth she couldn't understand and couldn't escape. Shaken to the core, Eliza did the only thing she believed was right: confront the man she had spent her whole life trying to win over. But what she got in return wasn't the truth. Or compassion. It was a wall colder than ever. She couldn't just sit with it. After 3 sleepless nights and dozens of unsent messages written and deleted, Eliza got in her car and drove to her father's house, the old place in the suburbs where she grew up, and where all her coldest childhood memories still lingered. She didn't call ahead. She didn't need a plan. She needed the truth. She needed an answer. Richard Matthews was in the living room reading the newspaper, a cup of Earl Grey on the old wooden table. When Eliza walked in, he looked up, eyes as unreadable as ever. Something wrong. She sat across from him. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. I took a DNA test. Anne, I know. Silence. Eliza expected shock. Or denial. Or maybe even an explanation. But none came. That's so. Just 2 words. No emotion. No reaction. No explanation. She felt her throat tighten. So, you knew all along? Why? Why didn't you say anything? Richard put down the paper and looked at her, not angry, not sorry. Just tired. Because it didn't matter. Your mother needed someone to put down as the legal father. I agreed. I raised you, gave you food and education. That should be enough. But I never felt loved. Eliza choked. I spent my whole life just trying, just hoping to hear you say one thing. You did well. He leaned back in his chair and spoke slowly. Not everyone has the capacity for affection. I never promised anything when I agreed to raise you. If you feel something's missing, that's your issue. That answer, cold as steel, sharp as a blade, sliced through every last hope Eliza had been clinging to. She shot to her feet, said nothing more, and walked out of that house like someone leaving a dead land. Eliza's mistake wasn't seeking the truth. It was believing that truth would somehow heal her. She thought facing it would open a door. Instead, she slammed into a wall that had stood her entire life. After the confrontation, Eliza fell into a deep, emotional void. She started to question everything, herself, her worth, and the meaning behind all the years she had worked so hard. It wasn't rage. It wasn't tears. It was the hollowing, like her soul had been taken, leaving just a shell behind. She came home, stepped into her apartment, and sank to the floor, still in her office clothes, her eyes blank. Years of striving, $1 million deals, financial awards, magazine features, recognition. And now, in this moment, Eliza felt it all meant nothing. Because the one person she wanted to impress had never once seen her as his daughter. She looked at her MBA diploma on the wall. Once a symbol of pride, now just paper. Eliza began to wonder, was she just the result of a chain of mistakes? Had she never truly had value? At work, she became irritable, impatient. She started skipping meetings, ignoring emails. At night, she drank, something she used to avoid. She withdrew from everyone. Even with her boyfriend, a relationship just beginning to bloom, Eliza started pulling away, offering no explanation. One night, lying motionless on the living room floor between an empty bottle of wine and a pile of scattered papers, Eliza realized she didn't know who she was anymore. Not Richard Matthews' daughter. Not a successful woman seeking validation. Nothing at all. She was a spiritually abandoned child from birth and still now. This was the lowest point in Eliza's life, the place where she no longer believed in family, in love, or worst of all, in herself. Where no matter how hard she tried, it never felt like enough. And just when it seemed like there was nowhere left to turn, an unexpected phone call from someone she hadn't thought about in years opened the first door out of the emotional abyss. The name, Aunt Claire, lit up on her phone screen as Eliza lay motionless on the sofa, blanket unfolded, cold coffee on the table. Her thumb hovered over decline, just like with every other call lately, but something stopped her. Maybe the name. Maybe the faint sense that a connection still flickered somewhere inside her. Claire was Eliza's mother's younger sister, a quiet woman who lived in the Vermont countryside. Eliza had only met her a few times as a child, and they'd barely kept in touch after her mother died. They were never close. But when Claire's voice came through the line, gentle, warm, something in Eliza broke. She wept. Eliza, I heard about the test results. I'm not going to ask any questions. I just want to say, if you need a place to rest, come to Vermont. I'm still at the old farm. There's a spare room and the apple trees are in season. She didn't reply right away. But a few days later, Eliza turned off her phone, shut down her work email, and drove 6 hours through the mountains to the only place that seemed to ask nothing of her, except her presence. Claire was waiting on the porch, holding a teapot, her eyes squinting in the late afternoon sun. She didn't ask anything, didn't offer advice. She simply walked Eliza through the garden, showed her the apple tree her mother had planted back in 1984. Then they sat down together in silence. Over the next few days, Claire taught Eliza how to make apple jam, how to care for the chickens, how to listen to nature without needing to understand or control it. It was an entirely different world, no tense meetings, no balance sheets, no judgment. One night, when Eliza couldn't sleep, she stepped out onto the porch and saw Claire knitting, moonlight filtering through the window. "You know," Claire said, not looking up, "love doesn't always come from the people we expect. And sometimes, being rejected by someone opens the door to finally accepting ourselves." That sentence, light as a breeze, took root in Eliza's heart. And for the first time in weeks, she felt a small current of life begin to flow through her again. As Eliza stepped back from the world of finance and immersed herself in the simplicity of life on the Vermont farm, the values she once held at the center of her life began to shift. She woke each morning to sunlight streaming through old wooden windows and the sound of roosters crowing behind the house. No phone ringing, no urgent emails. Instead, there was the smell of Aunt Claire's apple pie, mornings spent weeding the garden, and quiet evenings reading by the wood stove. At first, Eliza felt like a stranger in this slower world. But with each passing day, that slowness began to feel like a kind of freedom. She began to realize the things that once made her feel successful, status, bank accounts, praise from boardrooms, were only a small part of the bigger picture. And the rest of that picture, she had never allowed herself to live. One afternoon, while Eliza was pruning rose bushes in the garden, Aunt Claire stood beside her and said, "Your mother loved roses." But she was never allowed to pursue that. Richard wanted her to be the wife of a businessman, not a gardener. Eliza stayed quiet. In that moment, something strange happened. Her anger no longer felt sharp. It softened into a deep sadness, a sense of compassion for her mother, for herself, and even for the father she once resented. She began writing in her journal again, not strategic notes, but her real feelings. About loneliness. About the quiet joy of planting something. About the vulnerability of realizing she no longer needed to be validated, just to be herself. For the first time, Eliza also called her ex-boyfriend, the one she'd pushed away during the worst of her breakdown. She apologized, didn't offer long explanations, just said from the heart, "I forgot who I was. But I'm finding my way back. And if you still want to walk with me, I'd be grateful." She was no longer the Eliza of Wall Street, no longer the daughter desperate to prove something. She was a woman slowly learning how to live without needing to be defined by anyone else. After her time in Vermont and the shift in perspective, Eliza decided to return to the city to face the father whose approval she had once craved so deeply. But this time, she wasn't hiding her pain behind achievements. Eliza walked into her childhood home, where every corner still held the imprint of pressure and criticism. But now she entered with an unusual calm, not hoping for acceptance, but ready to release herself from the burden of needing it. The conversation happened in the living room, soft light spilling through the windows, creating a space both familiar and distant. Richard Matthews looked at her, his gaze still carrying a hint of skepticism and coldness, but Eliza no longer flinched. She spoke with a voice that was gentle but steady. "Dad, I know you've never really shown approval toward me. And I know I've never been the daughter you wanted. But I don't need that approval anymore. I've found myself, and I want you to know that." Richard stayed silent for a long moment. His gaze softened slightly, but he said nothing. Eliza continued, "The truth is, I know now that I'm not your biological daughter. But I don't think that makes me worth any less or means we can't care about each other. You're not perfect. Neither am I. But maybe we can start again, not as father and daughter, but as two people who can learn to understand and respect each other. The moment was full of complicated emotions. Richard bowed his head, as if grappling with something inside himself. Finally, he said, "I don't know where to begin, but I admire your courage. I failed to express my feelings the right way. If you're willing, we can try again." Eliza smiled, a smile full of forgiveness and hope. For the first time in her life, she felt free from the need to prove anything. She had stood tall and faced her past, without letting it define her. After the conversation with her father, Eliza felt a profound internal shift and began to notice positive changes in her daily life. She returned to her work in finance, but now she no longer chased numbers or outside validation the way she used to. She worked with a calmer mindset, set clearer boundaries, and understood that success wasn't just about money or titles. It was about fulfillment and balance. Her relationships began to shift as well. Eliza opened up more to friends and colleagues, sharing past struggles without shame. It surprised some people, but also made them feel closer to her and more willing to support her. She also carved out more time for the personal passions she had long neglected: reading, journaling, walks in the park. These simple moments gave her a new kind of energy and helped her stay grounded in her soul. One Sunday morning, Eliza and Aunt Claire hosted a small gathering with a few close friends in Vermont. In that cozy atmosphere, she felt the warmth and acceptance she had been searching for, not from titles or achievements, but from genuine affection and real connection. She began to rebuild her relationship with her father not through expectation, but through forgiveness and understanding. While things weren't perfect, they could move forward together and create a new bond, one rooted in respect and sincerity. Even as she began changing herself and improving her relationship with her father, Eliza couldn't avoid the emergence of new challenges, both external and deeply internal. After reconnecting with her father, Eliza hoped everything would fall into place, but reality proved more complicated. At work, the same old pressures remained. Colleagues still looked at her with skepticism after she had spent so much time focused on personal growth rather than climbing the corporate ladder. Some didn't understand the changes she had undergone and even questioned her competence and commitment to the company. Her relationship with her father, too, was not always smooth. Despite the progress they had made, deep-seated wounds still lingered beneath the surface. Some conversations turned tense when old memories resurfaced, leaving Eliza feeling unsettled and, at times, tempted to give up. She also wrestled with lingering doubts about her identity. The unresolved truth about her origins remained a fracture in her heart. The question, "Who am I, really?" kept echoing in her mind, making it difficult to find lasting peace. In her most vulnerable moments, Eliza felt torn between two worlds: the world of success and ambition she had built for herself, and the world of honesty and forgiveness she was striving to embrace. This inner conflict left her disoriented and questioning her own path. But with the unwavering support of her close friends and Aunt Claire, Eliza gradually learned to accept uncertainty and understand that change isn't always smooth. Sometimes, growth requires weathering the storms. After all the transformation and emotional reckoning, Eliza prepared to face the final confrontation with her past and the lingering pain in her relationship with her father. One autumn evening, Eliza received an invitation from her father, a private dinner at his home. It wasn't their first meeting since their recent conversations, but something about this invitation felt different, deeper. At the dinner table, the atmosphere was tense but serious. Richard Matthews looked her directly in the eyes, his voice lower and gentler than usual. "Eliza, I know I've hurt you deeply. I was under pressure from my own father and never really learned how to show love. Maybe I was too rigid and made you feel abandoned." Eliza listened closely, sensing the sincerity in every word. This was what she had longed for, his acknowledgement of the pain and his willingness to open up. She, too, opened her heart and shared the hurt and pain she had carried for so long. "I've held a lot of pain inside too, Dad. But I know we're both human, and forgiveness is the only way we can truly heal. Together, they reflected on their shared journey, on misunderstandings and unspoken expectations. In that moment, Eliza realized that true acceptance doesn't always come from others. It must begin within herself. After that dinner, Eliza's relationship with her father began a new chapter, a chapter of understanding, forgiveness, and genuine love. Following these emotional turning points and the meaningful confrontation with her father, Eliza entered a new phase of life, with a lighter heart and a deeper understanding of herself and her relationships. She came to understand that love and acceptance don't always come from the people we most hope they will. Instead, the journey toward true recognition is one of learning to love yourself, embracing your flaws, mistakes, and imperfections. At work, Eliza no longer focused solely on numbers or performance. She began investing time in building authentic relationships with her colleagues, offering support and inspiring those around her. She also took the initiative to participate in community efforts, spreading positivity and empathy. Outside of work, Eliza found joy in simple things: quiet mornings with a cup of coffee, relaxing walks, and writing in her journal to reflect on her journey of self-discovery. She learned to listen to her inner voice and protect her peace of mind. Through it all, Eliza understood that life isn't a race to prove herself to others, but a journey of living truthfully, of living with meaning and authenticity. As she embraced this new chapter with greater maturity and self-awareness, Eliza began to see clear, lasting changes in her life, not just psychologically, but also in her relationships and lifestyle. One of the clearest signs was a newfound calm and confidence in how she handled challenges and stress. In the past, every criticism or lack of acknowledgement from her father wounded her deeply. Now, she had learned to hold on to her self-worth and not let external voices shake her inner conviction. In her personal relationships, she built stronger trust and connection with her loved ones. She became more open about her feelings, unafraid to show vulnerability or ask for support. This helped her feel more loved and created deeper bonds. Professionally, Eliza stopped chasing achievements to win approval. Instead, she focused on meaningful projects that contributed to the community and created lasting value. This gave her a deep sense of fulfillment and purpose. Her daily habits also changed for the better. She prioritized her mental and physical health, found pleasure in reading, meditating, and taking walks outdoors. These simple practices helped her maintain balance and inner strength. All these signs pointed to Eliza walking firmly on a path of sustainable growth, no longer tied down by past expectations or rejection, but living fully as her authentic self and expanding her love and compassion to those around her. Through all the experiences and lessons on her journey, Eliza gradually deepened her understanding of herself and the world, and in doing so, began building a new life, one filled with meaning and fulfillment. Eliza understood that a person's true worth isn't measured solely by achievements or external recognition, but more importantly by inner peace and a sense of fulfillment. She had learned to forgive her father, not just to mend the broken relationship, but to free herself from the weight of the past. Her actions began to reflect the shift, becoming more intentional and positive. She took the initiative to nurture family bonds, openly expressing love and appreciation to her loved ones. At work, she emerged as a compassionate leader, someone who listened, supported her colleagues, and fostered a workplace culture of connection and inspiration. Eliza also used her personal experiences to uplift others facing similar struggles. She became a mentor, shared her journey at conferences, and wrote a blog about overcoming pain and rediscovering herself. Her life was no longer governed by fear of rejection or emotional scarcity, but built on a foundation of self-acceptance, love, and a deep understanding of her own worth. Eliza Matthews was no longer just a successful woman in the world of finance. She had become a symbol of resilience, growth, and the power of transforming pain into purpose. She embodied the truth behind the saying, "Family isn't just blood, it's love and understanding." Her story reminds us that material success and professional achievements are only a small part of true happiness. Recognition and love from our family, especially our parents, are deeply human needs. Yet, sometimes the absence of that love becomes the very force that drives us to grow and embrace ourselves more fully. Eliza's journey was filled with hardship, facing criticism, emotional neglect, and the shocking truth about her origins. But more importantly, she learned that forgiveness and self-acceptance are the keys to healing deep emotional wounds. Embracing an imperfect past and forgiving others for their flaws allowed her to find a sense of inner freedom. The greatest lesson in this story is that family isn't solely about blood or social labels. It's about sincerity, love, and the choice to accept one another. When we learn to love ourselves and approach our family relationships with a more open heart, life becomes more complete and meaningful. Eliza also proved that everyone has the right to redefine their own value, no matter how heavy the pressure or expectations from family or society may be. True success is the harmony between what's within us and what's around us, between what we give and what we receive in our relationships. Eliza Matthews proved something vital. No matter how many painful trials or moments of self-doubt we go through, our greatest strength lies in our resilience and our ability to love ourselves. Have you ever felt abandoned, unrecognized, or unloved by those closest to you? Eliza's story is a reminder that no one is perfect, and every single one of us is worthy of love, especially from ourselves. Start today. Don't hesitate to forgive and appreciate yourself. Don't let other people's expectations or pressure dictate your life. Open your heart and build relationships grounded in sincerity, because that is the true foundation of a full and joyful life. If Eliza's story resonated with you, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever gone through something similar? How did you overcome it and find peace within yourself? Leave a comment, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe to explore more touching and inspiring stories about life and personal growth with me.